I'm going to record. Susie Rosengarten is the one that asked me to do this class originally, and then she had a conflict today. So I told her I would definitely record
Sippy,
it.
how do you send? If you type it in on chat, how
Just
do you send it?
hit enter, enter or return.
On your keyboard?
Yep.
Hi, B.
Thank you.
No problem.
It's Deb.
Childbirth. Yeah, look at the people I checked out. Breadcrumbs.
Deb, how's mom?
She is recovering well. She's at my brother's house.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, because I wanted to take this class. Gina's taking her to her appointment. So.
Okay.
All right. Shoshi, my daughter Shoshi, is also here sitting next to me, so she says hello. She's not on camera. I think we're going to get started, but feel free to also throw in any more superstitions to chat that you think of while we're going along. So it's interesting, and maybe we'll figure this out as we go, thinking about the difference between traditions and superstitions. My daughter says I'm yelling. I will stop yelling. The difference between superstitions and traditions, customs. And I'm not sure where you draw the line on that, right? And some of the things that we think of superstitions, there are Jewish reasons for doing them. So I think that's going to be an interesting part of our discussion, and feel free to share your thoughts on that as we go along. All right, so we're going to get started. Here we go. So I want to start out by, talking about the evil eye, because the evil eye is really an important concept in terms of Judaism and superstition. So there are three different kind of categories about the evil eye. By the way, these sources I'm sharing with you, none of them are original. I found them in different places on the internet, and you can see the sources at the bottom of the thing, and I can send you all the PowerPoint afterwards if you want to take a look. But they're the kind of three different categories when we look at the evil eye and what it is, and we're going to look at the three of them. One is the evil eye is a destructive force of nature. One is it as a showiness that could lead to jealousy, and one is about the psychological impact that the evil eye could have. So we're going to talk kind of about those three different categories of the evil eye, because a lot of times when we're talking about Jewish superstitions, people are worried about the evil eye. That if somebody gives you the evil eye, that something bad is going to happen. All right, so let's look at it first as a destructive force of nature. Would somebody like to read us this text? Karen, go ahead. Thank you.
The evil eye has within it a burning energy, and man can be harmed by one who has that burning power, because this type of eye can burn like fire that burns.
Okay, so this is the idea of this kind of evil eye can cause physical harm to a person or to a group of people, but it's literally a physical damage that the evil eye can cause. Okay, who would like to read us this one?
The rabbis placed their eyes on someone, and he died. The Azon Aish wrote, "Among the foundations of the creation, a person can use their thoughts to spur the hidden causes in the world of action. A simple thought expressed through one's eyes can cause terrible destruction even among solid physical things. This is one of the mechanisms that Hashem uses to carry out his din, judgment, in the world. And it is possible that the greater a person is, the greater will be the power contained within his eyes."
So the way I once had this explained to me, what this is talking about, is that that God brings blessings into the world, and that we can draw down those blessings. Like brachot is a word for blessings, and bracha is related to the word brecha, which means pool, like a swimming pool. So there are these pool of blessings that we can draw down on ourselves and on people around us by doing good things, etc. But that we can also draw down this negative energy, right? And that if we say bad things, if we give someone a curse, if we give somebody the evil eye, that we can draw down this negative energy and cause bad things to happen. That is the concept of the evil eye. And there's this concept in Judaism is that words have tremendous power, and the evil eye looking at somebody has tremendous power, and that when we say things, even though they may not physically be real, that they create a reality in and of themselves. A little spiritual. All right, let's take a look at some more. This is a long one. Who wants to read a long one? Go ahead, Debbie.
Rabbi Yehoshua says, the evil eye, its explanation is one who is not happy with his lot and places his eye on his fellow who is wealthier than he, thinking, when will I be as wealthy as the great wealth of this man? And this causes evil to himself and to his fellow. Vapor comes up from that thought and burns the things that he put his eye towards with an evil eye. He also burns himself inside.
It's a really interesting idea that when you give the evil eye, not only do you cause harm to others, but to yourself, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. Since he desires things, the thought of which he does not have the ability in his hand to materialize, he destroys his body as he shortens his spirit and removes it from the world. And this is the evil eye about which Rabbi Yehoshua spoke. And the evil inclination, the hatred of the creations, like their simple meaning, remove a person from the world. According to this approach, the evil eye is a destructive force that a person must actively guard against. It is a kind of consuming energy that can actively harm another individual and may even harm the practitioner as well.
So which of the mitzvot, which of the commandments do you think that this one ties into? I'll give you a hint, it's one of the 10 commandments.
Not to covet your neighbor.
Not to covet. So you might think, well, what's wrong with coveting my neighbor? What's wrong with wanting what he has? Well, this is telling you that it could lead to the evil eye. That you, first of all, by wanting what your neighbor has and feeling negative about it, you could bring negative things to happen to him. You also cause destruction to him, to yourself. So this concept of the evil eye is that if you start either saying good things that are happening to somebody else or saying it to you, that it could bring down this kind of negative energy. So for example, I know people who, if you ask them how many children they have, they won't say. They'll just say a lot, or thank God, or they're wonderful, because the idea is that if you somehow, tempt the evil eye and you say, I have 11 children, that might bring down some kind of negative force and something might, God forbid, happen to them. So that's the concept of the evil eye. Am I making sense? Because it's kind of a confusing concept, this evil eye.
I want to know where they got the wording, why they're saying the evil eye.
So the Hebrew for it literally is the English, it's ayin hara, right? What does that sound like that you've heard before? Ayin hara is when you hear people say kinahora. Kinahora is kind of the string together version of ka'ayin hara, okay? Ka'ayin hara means like the evil eye. So ka'ayin hara, kinahora. If somebody says something and they don't want to bring the evil eye, they say kinahora. How many children do you have? I have 3 kinahora, right? So it shouldn't draw down the evil eye. So that's where that kinahora comes from. And sometimes people say kinahora pa, which is like the spitting, which is, again, this is superstition. But I wanted to start with the evil eye to show you that this kind of this spiritual background for this idea of the ayin hara, it's not just merely a superstition, that there's something behind it.
But what is that prefix, ke, before ayin?
Like. As if, like.
That's Hebrew or that's Yiddish?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Come on.
Like.
Is the evil eye, in a sense, creating anarchy and chaos in the society as opposed to justice and caring for your fellow human being?
I really like that, George. It's sort of the opposite of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself, right? Somebody else has something good, you don't want that for them, and you want something bad to come upon them. And that draws down the evil eye. But people also get worried about drawing it down on themselves, right? That if you say something this is, I think, a very deep superstition. If you say something good about your life, you're afraid that that's going to make something bad happen to it, right? So, It's really funny because I grew up with almost no superstition. My parents are not superstitious people. And somewhere along the line, I have taken all of these things on. So if I say something bad, I often will say, God forbid, right? You know, something, because you don't want something bad to happen. There's this concept of bringing on something bad. All right, so this idea that the showiness could lead to jealousy, which is a part of what I was talking about. Who'd like to read this one? Mandy, you want to read?
One that becomes wealthy should be sure to do a mitzvah with some of his money to prevent and
Ayin hara.
okay, from damaging it. What exactly is ayin hara, which is spoken about in so many different places? It is clear that if one causes his friend to become jealous of him, he is responsible and liable for the pain he caused him, and this could even cause him to ultimately lose his wealth. He therefore needs to do a mitzvah to protect himself from difficulties.
So you don't want to make somebody else feel bad. So you don't want to boast or brag about what you have in a way that would make somebody feel bad, because that could bring the ayin hara, could bring the evil eye. Who would like to read this part, this continuation?
I can read this one.
Great.
The mechanism of the ayin hara is rooted in the spiritual reality of all people being connected to one another. Ayin hara means that one is jealous of another, is bothered by his very being, and therefore he wants only bad for him. Since all people's lives are mutually dependent on one another, it is possible that this will cause the successful person's life to be limited, and thereby more susceptible to injury or damage.
It's a really interesting idea, right? That we are all connected, that we're one people. So that if you have this feeling, if you're causing someone to be jealous and you make them feel bad and they give you an ayin hara, that both of you are going to be hurt in the process. And that we have to be very sensitive to how we make other people feel and how we act, that we shouldn't be bragging or boastful, etc.
But don't we want to, if we're doing a mitzvah like going to minyan, it's not one, not two, not in Yiddish usually, and all the way, so that we keep the evil eye from identifying us as doing a mitzvah?
That's interesting. I have not.
To do with not counting.
Right, I haven't heard that before, George, but Shoshi's sitting next to me and she says the idea of not counting people, that goes all the way back to the Torah. So in the book of Numbers, when we were told to take a census, instead of counting the people, Moses took a half shekel from each person and then counted the money. Because each person is more important than just a number. We shouldn't reduce somebody to being just a number. But that's interesting that you tied it into the ayin hara, that if we're counting people, it also might be an ayin hara. It's a really interesting thought. Thank you. All right. Who would like to read? Who hasn't read yet? Judy, you want to read?
I don't know the second word.
The Maharal.
The Maharal taught that even a lack of concern for another can be considered like an ayin hara. Whoever is aware of another's needs and has the ability to help him, but is uninterested in doing so, is declaring that this other person is irrelevant and superfluous to him. When one is jealous of another and gazes upon him with an ayin hara, this can cause damage. However, justice demands that this will only happen if the recipient of the ayin hara had previously done something to make himself vulnerable to the ayin hara. One possibility would be that he had caused the first person to be jealous of him in a very specific manner. It is clear and well established that one who is not self-focused is a giver and not a taker, and all of his matters will not arouse any jealousy.
So this I really thought was interesting, because it looks like the rabbi's taking a superstition and trying to make it religiously and logically based, right? So if you give somebody an ayin hara, the evil eye, and he gets punished or something bad happens to him, it's only because the person really deserves it because he had done something bad to begin with. But if he was a really good person, then the bad thing's not going to happen to him. So it's almost coming up with this religious justification for the superstition, which I just thought was really interesting.
One of the reasons that might be the case is you're not allowed to be superstitious.
And Shoshi says, this is very interesting, that there's a part in the Torah where it says you're not allowed to be superstitious. You're not allowed to make your decisions based on the stars. So this all has to tie into some religious reasons. Although there are lots and lots of superstitions in Judaism. What about the evil eye being a look? So I think that we've seen here that the evil eye can either be your words or just you're looking at somebody, which is really also interesting because the way you look at somebody can make them feel very bad. Our teachers all know this, right? We know the teacher eye, that we can just look at a kid in a certain way that's going to get them to change their behavior. Parents know that as well. So it definitely can be a look as well. All right, we're going to look at the psychological impact, and then we'll get into some other stuff besides just the ayin hara. Who wants to read this from Rabbi Soloveitchik? Shelley, you want to read?
Okay. The matter of the ayin hara is crystal clear to me. There are, everybody is in the way. I can't see what the word is.
There are people.
There it is. I was trying to move my bar out the way. There are people whose lives are entirely dependent on the thoughts of others, whether they approve of them, forget about them, or praise them. At the moment, they realize that others no longer approve of them or care about them. This immediately destroys their spiritual strength and self-confidence. People like this see themselves exclusively from the perspective of others without recognizing their independent abilities. For people like this, the ayin hara can be devastating. When others gaze upon them with an ayin hara, meaning some degree of opposition or disapproval, their very humanity can be completely destroyed.
So this is not thinking of it as something coming from God, but this is saying if we care too much about what other people think of us, and then they think badly of us, then we're going to feel terrible. So it's more of a psychological approach to the ayin hara. All right. So those are kind of the different ways you see the ayin hara. But then I want to show you a few biblical and rabbinic texts to show you that this actually goes back very long time. Lori, you want to read us this text from Deuteronomy?
Beware lest you harbor the base thought, the 7th year, the year of remission is approaching, so that your eyes will be evil toward your needy kinsmen and give them nothing. He will cry out to the Lord against you, and you will incur guilt.
Okay, so this was the part when we talked earlier about the evil eye can be recognizing that somebody has need and turning away from them. So if you ignore somebody's need, that brings on the evil eye. Here's another one from Deuteronomy. Kate, you want to read?
Yep. He who is most tender and fastidious among you shall turn an evil eye to his brother, and the wife of his bosom, and the children he has spared to share with any of them the flesh of the children that he.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right, that he eats, because he has nothing else left as a result of that desperate straits to which your enemy shall reduce you in all of your towns.
Okay, so again, if you are not helping the people who need you, right, your brother, wife of your brother, their children, this is going to cause you to be attacked by your enemies, right? It's going to bring the evil eye on you. All right, this is from Proverbs. Right, it's a kind of a baseless hatred, Shoshi says. Good. George, you want to read this one from Proverbs?
Cut off.
Our text is partially cut off by the pictures on the side, so I can't see all of the words.
Okay.
So I'll pass. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So this is a short one. It says, do not eat the bread of one with an evil eye. Do not crave for his dainties. So if there's somebody who's giving you the evil eye, who is not treating you well, who is not kind, you shouldn't even break bread with them. You shouldn't eat with them because you don't want to associate with that kind of person. All right, and this is from a commentary on Genesis, which I thought was really, really interesting. It's based on the story of Sarah and Abraham and Hagar. Karen, you want to read this one?
And he, Abraham, came to Hagar, and she became pregnant. And what do we learn from the angel's assurance to her in Genesis? Behold, you will become pregnant and give birth to a son. Is that correct?
Oh, it should be son. Sorry.
Okay, that's
A
okay.
bad typo.
And give birth
All right.
to a son.
Go ahead, keep reading.
It teaches us that Sarah placed the evil eye upon her, and she, Hagar, miscarried her baby, the one she had originally conceived with Abraham prior to fleeing from Sarah.
Okay, so this shows us, yeah, that she had conceived, that Hagar had actually conceived and was pregnant before Ishmael, and she miscarried because Sarah gave her the evil eye. Okay, and then after the angels reassured Sarah, then Hagar later got pregnant and had a baby of her own. So this is the power of the evil eye.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no good.
This is midrash, and is this something that's political that's going on, perhaps between the Israelites whenever this midrash was written, and perhaps the descendants of Hagar and her son Ishmael? So are we looking at this in a political context?
It could be. So you're thinking this comes from the Arabs and the Jews fighting, and so they want to. That's what they're getting at, maybe. But it shows that the rabbis really believed in this power of the evil eye. And I will tell you that when it comes to babies, it's one of the places where people are most superstitious and most worried about the evil eye. And I think that part of that makes sense, because if you think about it, babies are so fragile. And especially if you think a long time ago, so many babies did not make it into adulthood, right? The very horrible thing and a sad thing. And people were probably always looking for explanations of why. Why did that happen? And why did this happen to one baby and not another? Or what can I do to protect my baby? I don't want anything to happen to my baby. So what can I do to keep them safe, to protect them from the evil eye?
Isn't that where the idea of saying Bisha'a Tova instead of Mazal Tov or congratulations when you find out someone's pregnant?
Absolutely. Yes. Okay, so Jews generally, when you find out somebody's pregnant, you don't say Mazel Tov, you don't say congratulations, you say Bisha'a Tova, which means it should happen at a good time. In other words, the baby should come when the time is right. And actually, Federation, I guess, just formed a group for people who are pregnant right now, which is such a weird time to be pregnant, and they named it Bisha'a Tova, which I thought was very cool. That was very cute. But yeah, so that's where that is. And we'll get to some of the superstitions later, but that's where the idea comes from, where Jews don't throw baby showers. There's a tradition of not buying anything for a baby until they're born. So like this idea that some people will like set up the whole nursery and have all the clothes ready and the crib set up before a baby comes. Jews generally don't do that. And this is superstition that you don't want to, I guess, count your chickens before they're hatched, right? You don't want to be too assured of it. You don't want to get anything for that baby until the baby comes along. All right, so now I thought we'd look at some good luck symbols, and then we'll look at some actual superstitions. Does that sound good? Okay, so one of them is the red string. Okay, have you guys seen people wearing this red string around their wrist? Is that familiar? I think like Madonna made that kind of popular. And if you go to Israel and you go to the Western Wall, very often there are people selling this red string to get you to put it on.
Oh, are you?
Who would like to read to us about the red string? Tom, you want to read?
Authentic Kabbalistic sources to indicate that the color red has the power to ward off the evil eye. Rabbi Moshe Stern confirms the existence of a custom to make use of red strings for protection against the evil eye. Interestingly, he specifically discusses tying it upon baby carriage or crib with no mention of any additional usage or wearing of such by others. Some people connect the red string to fertility.
So sometimes when the red strings you can get to in Israel, they'll often say they took a string and they wrapped it around Rachel's tomb. Rachel, one of the matriarchs, she had a lot of trouble conceiving and eventually, had 2 children. And that somehow that will bring luck and fertility. Again, they'll put it on a baby's crib, a baby's stroller. Somehow this red string would protect the baby. Okay, the Chamsa, which is a picture of here, is another very strong good luck charm, more in Sephardic Judaism, more in Judaism from Spain and the Middle East and that kind of area, but for sure another very powerful symbol. Debbie, you want to read to us about the Chamsa?
Our sages suggest that one may avoid a sudden evil eye by reciting I, son of, as above. Other authorities recommend adding the verses from Genesis 25:27, Psalm 5:8, and Numbers 24:2. The Gaon, oh, go ahead.
Yep, no, keep going.
Hida writes that the general custom is to say 5 in order to avoid an evil eye. This is the reason for hanging a picture of a hand with 5 fingers and the Hebrew letter Hey on it. Hey on it, which has the numerical value of 5.
Great. So Hamsas look different ways. Sometimes
you know, and the thing that, I'm sorry, I was gonna say, you know, I've always been confused. I think I'm the only Jewish person that doesn't really get into hamsas. I think they're beautiful, but isn't it like originally from Turkey or something, or it's not really? Yeah,
it's definitely Middle Eastern. You see it, you know, in Yemen and Iraq and all sorts of the Edota Mizrach, right? The Eastern Jewish community, and some of it may have come from being influenced by the Islamic communities where they were living, because I've also seen it used as a symbol in Islam. But again, it's this idea that it wards off the evil spirit.
But the letter Hey is one of those critical letters because it is part of Yud Hey Vav Hey. So when we got adding the Hey to Sarah's name, Sarah to Sarah with a Hey at the end, or adding the Hey to Abram's name to Abraham, again, we're having that relationship, the Hey, and as part of the name of God.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, so it's a part of God's name. So I think that's indicating that we're not just looking for miscellaneous protection. We're looking for protection from God, right? And that's the idea of the Hamsa, for sure. All right. The other one, again, this is also very Sephardic. This is also from the Middle East, is the idea that the color blue is also brings good luck. Kate, you want to read this one?
Yep. Zohar, Volume 3, 163b. Certain beings have the capacity to cast an ayin hara when they look your way. Prepare before your eyes the color blue, and their eyes will have no influence over you. Sota 17a24. It is because sky blue dye is similar in its color to the sea, and the sea is similar to the sky, and the sky is similar to the thorn of glory, as it is stated, and they saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet the color blue, like a paved work of sapphire stone, and like the very heaven for clearness.
So blue has a lot of roots in Judaism, right? You tend to think of blue as a Jewish color. The strand in the tzitzit of the talit, sometimes it will have originally had a blue thread. The 10 Commandments were sapphire, right? Which is the original 10 Commandments, which are blue. There's definite connection to blue. And if you've ever been to Tzfat and been to the synagogues, their doors painted blue all over Tzfat, and the synagogues have tons of blue on them. So this is considered a good luck. And in the comments, Karen said that see the Hamsa and the red string in Indian culture a lot too. That's really interesting. I definitely think that some of these superstitions, you know, cross cultures, and Jews have been influenced by all the countries in which they've lived, for sure. All right, so now we're going to look at some of the actual superstitions that I found when I was doing research on this. And if we have time, we'll go back to some that we saw in the chat. Some of these I had heard of, some I hadn't. So it'll be interesting to hear what you think. So this one we talked about a little bit, the spitting 3 times. Molly Beth, you want to read this one?
Sorry. Spitting 3 times. Whether done literally or figuratively by saying poo, poo, poo. Spitting 3 times, a mystical number, is a classic response to something exceptionally evil or good. For centuries, Jews have performed this ritual in response to seeing, hearing, or learning of something terrible, and as a prophylactic measure to prevent such a tragedy from happening or recurring.
Okay, so you'll hear people say kinahora or kahinahara, tu, poo, 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 right? Or actually maybe spit. I think this is a lot like some cultures have the idea of throwing salt over your shoulder. I think it's right. Isn't that the same thing? Maybe not. I don't know. But this idea that if you spit on it, the bad thing won't happen. When I saw My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which I love that movie. There's just so much in common, the stuff in that movie and Jewish culture. And one of them, the mother keeps, spitting all over the place. So the 222 is definitely with other cultures. Have you guys heard of this before? Is that familiar? The spitting? Yeah.
Oh yeah, we do it all the time.
All right. Oh, there's a little bit more of the spitting. Wait, who was reading? Molly Beth, why don't you finish this?
Ironically, it is traditional to perform the same action in response to something wonderful, such as good news or the birth of a beautiful and healthy child, to ward off the evil eye. Spitting was long considered a potent protector against magic and demons. Ancient and medieval physicians, including Maimonides, described the positive values of saliva and spittle.
Very interesting. Somebody mentioned before the idea of Lilith, and I think that was in the chat, Lilith and demons, and that they might be after babies. So one of the midrashim, one of the interpretations of Genesis of why there are two stories of creation, right? One that has Adam and Eve created at the same time, the two people, and one has them separate, is that the first time God created people, it was Adam and it was Lilith. Lilith was the other half of Adam. And that, depending on which interpretation you read, Lilith was not willing to be subservient to Adam, did not like the way Adam was treating her, and ran off from the Garden of Eden. And so there are all sorts of really horrifying stories about Lilith. How do I put this in a nice way?
Trying to steal babies.
All right, but the trying to steal babies is also like creating demon babies. I think there's some really weird stuff about Lilith,
Like
but yeah, but we're not going to go into the details. I can give you some reading material if you're really interested in it. Yeah. So this, again, protecting from the evil eye, but also protecting babies from Lilith is all part of this. All right, this is one I had not heard of before I started doing this research, and that's chewing on thread. Lori, you want to read this one to us?
The popular
Bobomysa.
Is chewing on a piece of thread whenever wearing a garment upon which someone is so actively sewing, such as attaching a button or repairing a seam. This practice may be related to the Yiddish phrase mir sollen nicht. Okay, I'm done. I can't do that. Verjänder Schäsel, meaning that one should not sew up the brains or common sense. Another explanation is that the burials are sewn around the remains of the deceased. Actively chewing while another is sewing on one's garments is a clear indication that one is quite alive and not yet a candidate for the grave. I thought it meant you didn't have a scissors.
When I was growing up, the Bobomysa I was told is you just can't ever sew a garment you're wearing. So if a button was off your shirt, you had to take off the shirt and sew it up. So it's a similar idea. This says if you're actually going to keep it on, then you're chewing on the thread. Well, I'm sure I told you that, right? So, but this idea that a burial shroud is sewn up, right? A person is sewn into their burial shroud. Again, you could see where that would bring bad luck. Have you guys heard of this one before? No? Okay. All right, I had never heard of this one either, pulling on one's ears. Judy, you want to read this one?
Pulling or tugging one's ears when sneezing. Especially common among Jews from Galicia and Lithuania, the practice of pulling on one's ear when sneezing has engendered heated arguments. Should one ear or both be pulled or tugged, and should one pull up or down? The reason for this custom is unclear. Originally, it was performed if the sneeze occurred when speaking about one who was dead. However, tugging has long been extended to all sneezes and is usually accompanied by reciting the Yiddish phrase, "Too long, lucky years."
Okay. Yeah, Debbie.
I'm wondering if that came about the sneezing thing, because wasn't it believed that if you were sneezing, it means you were like really sick, you were going to die?
I definitely heard that sneezes have some, like that you die for a second when you sneeze, right? Because you close your eyes or whatever.
That at one point, like the images that at one point people didn't actually get sick, they just died, and oftentimes they would sneeze would be pulling on your.
Did you guys hear what Shoshi said? She's talking really soft. She said there was a midrash that people didn't used to get sick and die; they just died suddenly, and that they died when they sneezed.
Yeah.
They would sneeze and
That's what
die.
I remember.
I think this is also where the idea of saying Gesundheit or God bless you or La Brute, all of that came from, is that somehow your soul leaves you somehow when you sneeze. There's another Jewish tradition about sneezes is that says if you sneeze at the same time somebody's saying something, you're sneezing on the truth.
Right.
If somebody says something, you sneeze, that means that what they said was true. Bee's
Right.
shaking her head. You've heard that one before?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Isn't it unusual for a Glitzianer and a Litvak to do something in common? I mean, they were usually not very simpatico, shall we
It's
say?
shocking.
And did one pull a left ear and the other on the right ear, or one up and one down? I mean, was it really did they do this in common, or did they also have different practices?
Yeah, my guess is that they argued about it. But I can tell you, I'm a Litvak through and through, but I never had heard this one before. But like I said, I really didn't grow up with much superstition.
Wait, so what do they do for people who sneeze multiple times in a row? You know, like sometimes people sneeze in like 3s,
Walk
5s,
around
7s.
pulling your ear a
Just
lot.
keep tugging on your ear.
They're very long ears, I guess, after a while. All right. Oh, this is the sneezing on the truth. I jumped ahead. I forgot I put that there. Tom, you want to read us about sneezing on the truth?
Sure. Midrashic
Mhm.
legend maintains that a sneeze used to announce impending death. The story is told that until the time of Jacob, the person at the close of his life sneezed and instantly died. Some ancient peoples believed that the little explosion in the head ensured approaching eternity. Rather than a mere irritation of the nasal passages, a sneeze was deemed a grave omen. Indeed, this may be the underlying reason for the development of the custom of saying long life and good health to one who has sneezed.
So I said that before you read it, but that's okay. So that's where that is. And this continues. Tom, you want to finish it?
A traditional belief is that when a person sneezes during a conversation, whatever has just been said will occur based on the concept of sneezing on the truth. While not as foolproof as direct prophecy, it is said to indicate that events that are rational and plausible will actually come to pass, or that an event that has already occurred really happened just as the story related.
So there's the sneezing on the truth. All right. This is about closing books. Laura, you want to read this?
I don't think it would hold up in a court of law.
Sure. Closing prayer books, Bibles, and Talmudic texts has a common practice in synagogues and study halls. The explanation appears to be related to the medieval fear that evil power of devils and demons who would take holy knowledge and somehow use it for their own nefarious purposes.
So you don't leave a prayer book or a Bible open. The way I had learned this, any of you who knew Rabbi Phil Nadel when he was in Milwaukee, he had a thing about not having prayer books or any Jewish books upside down. So I remember when we'd finish services tefillah with the kids in the Beit Midrash, he would walk through and find all the Sidurim that were upside down and turn them right side up, which made me obsessive about it. And now I'm always turning them right side up. But I think that's the same idea, which again, it's a Baba Mesa, it's an old wives' tale, a superstition, but also is based in respect of these holy books. So there's something to it. All right, this one I also had never heard of. Judy, you want to read this one?
Placing salt in pockets and corners of the room. Demons and similar creatures were known to reside in new houses and cause such chaos that people were actually paid to live in them before the arrival of their intended occupants. Because salt was generally regarded as having superb powers against evil spirits, it was often placed in the corners of a room where these creatures hid. The same reasoning applied to new clothes, where smaller goblins and elves could secret themselves in pockets. By placing a small amount of salt in the pockets, the owner of the clothing hoped to drive these beings away and foil their evil designs.
This one really did not sound all that Jewish to me, but I found it on myjewishlearning.com. So that was the whole salt one. Thought it was interesting. All right. Shelley, you want to read this one? Wait, Shelley, you're still muted.
Can you hear me
Good.
now?
Yep.
Okay. Wearing a metal pin on clothes when embarking on a trip. In some communities, a safety or stray pin is attached out of sight under a shirt collar or on a sleeve before taking a journey. Metal was thought to be a powerful protective substance. According to the renowned Eliza Worms, a leader of the, can't say that word,
Pietistic. Pastei
Hyacinth
Ashkenaz. Okay.
Ashkenaz of the medieval period, metals were the products of civilization and thus could successfully attack and repel the evil spirits of a less sophisticated society.
So have you guys heard this before about putting on a pin when you're traveling? That was a new one to me. All right. This goes on, Shelley. You want to continue? This is the next part of that.
Okay. The protective power of metal also can be derived from the biblical discussion of the first plague, in which God states that all water stored in vessels of wood and stone, Exodus 9:17, will turn to blood. According to this, metal receptacles are not mentioned because they must have protected the water from changing. Another explanation is that that metal means luck, since Barzel, the Hebrew word for iron, is an acronym for the names of 4 of the mothers in the children of Israel: Bilhah, Rachel, Zilpah, and Leah, who could ward off all dangers to their progeny.
So another, it's continuing with the metal, right? So the reason that the doesn't mention metal vessels is because that was somehow protected from turning into blood during the 10 plagues. That's what I would wonder, is if they actually had metal vessels. All right. This is a Russian one. Molly Beth, you want to read this one?
Sure. Don't sit at the corner of the table. According to Russian superstition, if an unmarried girl sits at the corner of the table, she won't get married for the next 7 years.
Uh-oh. So we better make sure we have all round tables so nobody has that problem. Don't sit at the corner of the table.
Is that similar to the one that if you take the last of something, you're going to end up as an old maid?
Oh, I have not heard that one before.
Oh, my Stops used to tell me that all the time. She wouldn't never let me take the last of something for that reason.
Goodness.
Only if you're married.
I've always told me not to take the last thing.
That's very funny. All right, this one I have definitely heard before. Aviva, want to read this one?
Yeah. Don't step over someone. If someone is sitting on the couch with their legs propped up on the coffee table, do not step over their legs. If you do, you will cause them to stop growing. To reverse this curse, just step back over them and ask that they put their feet down.
So I guess if somebody's full grown, you can step over their legs, but if it's a kid, you better make sure you don't step over them and stop them from growing.
I mean, where do they get that from? That's like just like saying don't stay, sit so close to the TV, you'll go blind or
You'll go
cross.
blind, yeah.
My girls
heard
would be
that.
definitely step over each other.
This part just doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's just weird. I don't know.
I don't know. They're Bobamaises. They're grandmother's stories. And some of them, I think, probably just get started in a certain family. The parent says that, and that gets passed on to the children and the children and the children.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I've heard of that.
Probably didn't want them to step over the children so they wouldn't fall or
Wouldn't
trip
fall on
or
them.
whatever,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yep, I've heard of that
Karen,
one.
read this one.
It's funny, this was the one I was thinking of.
Oh, really?
And yep, and this is what I do. Never leave your purse on the floor. Never leave your purse or bag on the floor if you want to keep your money.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Well,
told
that's
that
as much
all
as
your money.
superstition or is avoiding thieves. I'm not quite sure.
I've heard, even if like at a friend's house or something,
Yeah.
they've like picked up my bag and like put it on a hook.
Mm-hmm.
Very funny.
But these are practical things. In other words, if you step over someone, you could trip and fall and you could hurt them and or yourself. So the same thing, if you want to forget where you put your purse or your bag or your whatever, if it's on the floor, you're likely to forget it. So these are practical things that are that we can use.
Yep,
And
I agree.
floors are really dirty.
That's right. Floors are dirty. All right. Mandy, you want to read this one?
Don't take the direct path home from the cemetery. Cemeteries are filled with evil spirits, so after visiting a loved one, don't go directly home. You wouldn't want the demons to follow you back to your house.
So there are lots of things connected to cemeteries. So this is one about not going directly home. This, what I would say is more of a custom than a superstition, is that when you leave a cemetery, you're supposed to wash your hands with water. Not washing them with soap to get them clean. It's a spiritual washing like people do before bread. So if you ever go to a house right after a funeral, they'll often have a bowl and a pitcher of water at the door, so you should wash your hands. I think that that's more about removing the ritual impurity about being near the dead than about the demons. So this is what I was saying with the superstitions versus the customs, you know, sometimes mold together a little bit. This is another one that I had heard before. Debbie, you want to read this one?
To avoid getting into a fight, make sure to place the knife down on a surface for the other person to pick it up. Or you can give it directly. If you point the sharp end to yourself, make the knife handle for someone else to grab.
So again, this one has a
read that
practicality,
wrong.
right?
Or
Not cutting somebody. Sorry, what, Debbie?
I think I just read it contextually wrong. Like it's, or you can give it directly. Okay, never mind. You got it.
Yeah. So that's another one that I had some practice, some practical stuff to it. I'm sorry, I'm catching up on the some of the chats. A bowl under the crib. Debbie, what's that about the bowl under the crib?
That had to do with Lilith also, with the amulets and the bowl. I actually took it was a couple years ago, I took a whole course on Lilith, and I don't remember the bowl, what it was, but I think it's supposed to be placed upside down actually, and it's supposed to capture her or something from coming up into the realm. I have to look again, but I do know there was something with the bowl under the crib and then the 3 amulets above. So.
And the thing about pregnant women not going to cemeteries, when I
Or
was
is it
pregnant with
funerals? I don't know if it's,
when I was pregnant with Shoshi, we lived in Chattanooga, and I served on the Hever Kadisha. I helped prepare bodies for burial. There weren't so many Jews there who could do it, and I did it when I was pregnant with her. I'd never heard that that was a superstition, and when people have heard that since then, they get all freaked out. Like, how could you do that? But
my mom was pregnant with me when my grandfather passed away. My great-grandfather passed away, and she wasn't allowed to go to the cemetery.
Wow. So again, this is not Jewish law. This is definitely a custom or a all right. Oh, we talked about this already, right? The idea of not getting gifts for a baby until the baby is born. This was an interesting one. Tom, you want to read this?
You're not supposed to say the name also. Isn't that a
Right. Everything about the baby is like, yeah, you don't say what the name is until, right, until the bris or the baby naming. You don't buy anything for the baby until it's born. Like you wait on everything until the baby is actually there. Tom, you want to read this one?
Sure. Never put a hat or shoes on your bed. You toss a baseball cap, beanie, or fedora on your bed, those pesky evil spirits will target you. Likewise, never put shoes on your bed.
I'd never heard this one before either. This was kind of interesting. The shoes on the bed makes sense. I don't think you'd want dirty shoes on your bed, but not sure about the hat. And also not ever heard of this one. Kate, you want to read this one?
Bring jam to a housewarming party. Strawberry, raspberry, blueberry, or any flavored jam is more than just a tasty gift to bring to a new home. It also serves as a distraction. While guests celebrate a new beginning, demons nosh on sweet jam instead of wreaking havoc.
So the tradition I grew up with about new houses is that you brought somebody salt and bread and then something sweet. So I guess maybe that's the jam, right? The bread, so they never should go hungry. The salt, that their life should have flavor, and something, you know, the sweet, so you should have sweetness in your life. So I guess this is another, like, something like that. Now this is, I think this is more than a superstition, more than a Bopa Misa. Lori, you want to read this one?
Change your name when you're sick. Every time you get sick is like a little alarm, is like an alarm clock for the angel of death. Change your name and you'll be safe.
So this doesn't mean like every time you get a cold, you would change your name, but if somebody, God forbid, is really sick, they often will change their name. And the idea is to kind of fool the angel of death because they're coming for somebody with a certain name and now they're going to get a different
And
names.
by changing the name, it usually.
This is also true, applicable, I've heard when you're sick, you change your place or where you know, from where you usually sit in a synagogue to a different place, again, so the angel of death or whoever cannot find you.
Great. So both of them. So that Shoshi just pointed out that when you change your name, usually you add a name. It's not that you get rid of your name, but you add your name. So you might add an extra middle name. And then there's a Jewish tradition, Shinui Makom Shinui Mazal, that if you change your place, you'll change your luck, right? So where you sit in shul or change, you know, where you're standing.
Right.
Exactly.
That's what I was taught growing up is, you know, if, unfortunately there's a death in the family, you move your seat in shul so that, you know, it's something different in your life. So hopefully keep that part in your past and something better happens now.
All right. And that is the last one. So we got a couple minutes. Let's look at any of the, 7 minutes still. Look at any of the ones you guys, so Debbie said at the beginning, the bells of the Rimonim are to keep the spirits out. So the Torah has those covers on them, the top with little bells to keep away the evil spirits. I had not heard that one before. You're walking with someone and you walk on a different side of something. You say bread and butter. I have not heard that before. I did, one of my mom's friends, I remember when I was a little girl, she came to our house through the back door. It was open and she saw it was open and she came in and she was getting ready to leave and my mom started walking her to the front door and she's like, no, you have to leave out of the same door you came in. And she was like really intense about it. So she like believed you always have to go in and out the same door. That was an interesting one.
The bread and butter is because it's things that go together. So even if you walk on separate sides of something, you still belong together. You're not supposed to be separate.
Nice. The not cutting the boys' hair till 3, again, I don't know if that's a superstition as much as like a custom, right? Like, just like you don't take fruit from a tree until it's 3 years old, right? So you don't cut the boys' hair. We talked about the pepepe and the chamsas, talked about childbirth. And again, throwing breadcrumbs into the water on Rosh Hashanah, I think is more of a custom, right? That symbolizes us throwing away our sins, right? And starting afresh. The breaking glass during weddings, again, we can have a couple of reasons for that. There's the idea that it helps us remember bad times, or even our happiest of times. We should remember the saddest of the destruction of Jerusalem. But I also, when I was reading, one of the customs I said was that it was to scare away the evil spirits. So that's another explanation for the glass breaking. No.
Which goes with something that my mom always said: when you break something in the house, you break a cup, you break a plate by accident, you say Mazal Tov just as you would at a wedding.
I've heard people do that. I never knew why. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Any other superstitions that we didn't cover that you guys were thinking of beforehand?
I quickly Googled the bowl and they said that people would bury them, but it's like how I said, it was called an incantation bowl or a demon bowl, and it's to catch the demons. So whether it's with Lilith or not, I don't know. But if they do it also under the crib for that reason, that's what I thought I heard in the Lilith class. But apparently that was a thing in the Middle East to do.
So I'm sure there are lots more. I did want to say that some non-Jewish superstitions are definitely not how Jews look at things. I'm thinking particularly of the number 13, the idea of 13 is bad luck. In Judaism, 13 is considered a symbol of good luck, right? They're the 13 attributes of faith. There's 13 as the age for bar mitzvah. So 13 is considered a really good number. So that's not considered a bad number.
There's not really any bad numbers.
Yeah, there aren't any bad numbers in Judaism. Almost every number has a positive symbol behind it.
There's the superstition about getting married on a Tuesday.
Oh, so it's supposed to be good luck to get married on Tuesday. Do you know why,
Right.
Aviva?
Isn't it because that's when God said it was good twice?
Yep.
That's supposed to give you
Ha'amayim
that
ki tov, right? God said twice that this was a good day, and so people have this tradition of getting married on Tuesdays is good luck.
There's also something about like what day a baby is born being like good or bad luck or whatever.
So she said there's also with babies being born when they're born, that's good or bad luck. I've not heard that before.
Not like, but like
Something about the
there's some,
personality
like,
of the
different
child, right?
attributes of the
Yeah.
child, yeah.
There's a custom of getting married outside under the stars, which is also supposed to be good luck. lots more superstitions than we covered. But I think what was interesting was to see that some of them have some basis in psychology or in good logic or safety. You know, the ones about babies, about not having something in the house for the baby before the baby's born, I've just always thought was really smart, right? If God forbid somebody loses a baby, the last thing they want to do is to walk into the house and see the room all prepared. I would think that that would make it much harder. But again, they're superstitions and they're different traditions. All right, I think that that's all. I really appreciate you all taking the time. I will email you guys the slideshow in case you want to take a look at it. And I'm wishing you all a wonderful day full of good luck.
Yasher Koach, Tippy.
Thanks, George. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you, Tiffy. This was great.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for the input.
Yeah.
Thank you.